Welcome to the Adaptability Movement Podcast. I'm Dan, this is Ben. We're here today to relaunch our podcast, formerly known as Resilience Sucks. And the reason we're doing that is to bring things into more alignment with our brand and to make it a much simpler message for people like yourselves to be able to find us and understand a bit more about how they can about how you can practically advance the performance of your team and your people. So we're quite passionate about this, Ben. I know a lot of people use passion in this space, but it's something that lights us up, and it generally becomes quite a lively conversation when we start to talk to people about that. Can you just explain to the listeners a little bit more about why is it that we do what we do?
Yeah, so I think we're both two people who have gone on separate journeys throughout life, but adaptability has been something that has come up in both our lives, across the journey over and over and over again. And it probably wasn't not too long ago that we didn't realise that was happening over and over again. We were constantly, trying to push ourselves to get better, whether it was, we spent a lot of time in high performance sport, me in football, yourself in football, as well as discus, athletics. So it's something that we're really trying to take our lessons that we learnt from, our experiences of the highs, but then also the lows of, our journey in high performance sport, and really share that with the listener, yourselves, to really broaden your horizons of what you want to know, how you can learn, and what is possible out there for you. So it's a great chance to learn from our journeys, which we'll go into a bit more in a second. And take some lessons from sport, but also some lessons from just daily life that we've gone through.
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, and I think for most people, is when you've had such a rich experience in an area, you often forget that you know what you know, and it's only when you're sort of talking to other people that are still sort of navigating that journey, and sometimes they've been really deep in it already, but haven't necessarily picked up as much of the clues along the way that have come to a point where it's like, I kind of get it now. Yeah. This is something central to everything else in adaptability that opens up possibility. It creates opportunity, and it allows you to kind of self-navigate and co-create your own existence. So that's what we're here to share with you today. And what we're going to start with is Ben, and Ben's going to tell us a little bit about his journey. So Ben grew up playing a number of sports. Actually, he grew up playing tennis. For a time, he was in a SASI, so a South Australian Sports Institute beach volleyball program, and with his football career in AFL, managed to get through junior ranks without necessarily making a lot of state teams. But what he did do is ended up getting drafted to Sydney for a year. And I'm not going to give away too much of the story. I'm going to ask Ben to sort of share a little bit about that now. But Ben, what was the sort of key moments within your career that have really shaped who you are now and why we're doing what we're doing here with the Adaptability Movement?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, grew up playing a lot of sports. Football was definitely my main sport, and was lucky enough at 18 to get drafted to the Sydney Swans, and went in there as a pretty raw, skinny, tall 18-year-old who didn't have a lot of life experience, outside of home and school. It was one that I learnt a lot in the time that I was there, probably more than I had in the, I say sometimes that I learnt more in the 1 year that I was there than the 17 years that I've been alive previously, because, I had to move out of home, had to, move into state, had to learn how to, look after myself in terms of all the different areas of life that you do from the day to day. But the reason that year was so pivotal for me was not only was it a year of growth and a year of, broadening my horizons, but it was also a year where I went through a lot of challenges in terms of, I'm an 18-year-old who has a 1 year rookie contract, and for 3/4 of that year, I'm injured the whole time, can't get on the field, can't have the opportunity to show, what I can do. Really disheartening, at the end of the year, get delisted, and they basically said, look, you didn't really show us what you could do because you were injured the whole time. And for a long time, I blamed injury as the reason as to why I didn't make it as an AFL player. Went back and played sandful footy, initially at the Magpies and then at South, and was fortunate to have a pretty good sandful career. But definitely spent probably the next 5 years after getting drafted kind of almost externalizing the blame of why I didn't make it as a footballer onto injuries is that main reason. And the thing was, it was because I had a lack of self-awareness about, you know, who I was at the time, what I actually needed to do to be an AFL player, but then also, you know, the journey that I was going through, I wasn't aware enough of what was going on around me and who was trying to help me, and I wasn't open to probably getting a lot of that help. I kind of just did what I thought was right, which, looking back, you know, as an 18-year-old, you know, you don't know much. You think you know a lot, but you actually, as you get older, you realise that you don't know much at all. So that was a massive pivotal moment for me. And then after, you know, once I moved through my 20s, I did a lot of study around, you know, sports science, did a master's degree in strength and conditioning as well. And those lessons, I guess, again, I took away a lot of stuff from that I then applied in my trade as a sports scientist, with the idea that I wanted to make sure that people didn't go through the journey that I went through, or they can learn from the lessons that I had as my experiences, because I thought that, again, I still thought it was all about the physical side of things. I now know that, you know, having worked in sport for, you know, 10 plus years, having played, you know, a lot of high level sport and high level footy, is that really that it's what's between the ears is the main thing that counts. Yes, the physical is a necessary part, but, you know, the difference between the best player on AFL list and the worst player on AFL list is, you know, a couple of percent maybe, but it's about what's, you know, going on in the head that makes, you know, a champion really.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think most of us, when we grow up and go through sport, unless we've got someone there that we already trust, like, you know, whether that's a mother or father figure that's had a very experienced sort of career in sport, or someone close to the family, that we are kind of just working it out for ourselves. And sometimes even when you do have that, you know, young people are rejecting that as anyway because they want to carve their own path. And so it's certainly familiar for me. The story you're talking around is I didn't necessarily have that direction, and I went through and fumbled my way through as well. And when I hear sort of, you know, talk with maybe a little bit of regret, or just, you know, that we're missing the opportunity to use what you know now back then, it really speaks to me. And the reason that we do what we do is because, you know, we are able to offer this as a self-discovery process, a way of taking people and leading people through an experience where it's a catalyst for them to discover it for themselves. They're not having to trust someone else to tell them and to somehow to understand that with all of the context that a, you know, 15, 16, 17-year-old has. So, you know, it's interesting when you say that. So tell me a little bit more about, as you went through that career, you like you said, you ended up doing a master's in strength and conditioning, and then got to a point where you discovered that actually there's something beyond this physical stuff that is a key part to performance. Like what does that become for you now? Yeah,
and I think that came along, you know, when we first started our high performance sport business together, Nexa Sports Performance back in the day, because I think it was, you know, not only yourself and Todd, but like I started to look at performance as more as a holistic thing. It's not just the physical. And yes, we were, you know, for years we were training people in the gym, but then, you know, we had a big focus on the stuff outside of the gym as well. You know, as coaches, creating greater relationships with people, helping them to communicate better, develop better habits and routines and that type of thing. And then obviously when COVID hit and we couldn't do the physical stuff anymore because gyms are all shut down, we as a business had to make a decision as to what we wanted to do and the direction we wanted to go in. And, you know, I still remember the day you and I sat down and spoke about where do we actually want to go, what do we actually want to be, and we decided that, you know, our passions were weren't in helping people, lift a little bit extra weight or get a bit stronger or anything like that. It was actually helping them to discover more about what was possible and challenging them in ways to really provide them with that experience where they can become more self-aware, where they can, learn how to have the tools of adaptability so that whatever challenge they're in, it might be in a sporting situation, it might be in a work situation, it might be at school. We work with people in all those areas, and it's all about how can you understand the situation you're currently in and what are the tools you have available to you to then progress towards something, whether you know what that is right now or whether you need to work on where you want to go to, but at least you have some tools to work towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned self-awareness earlier, and you don't know you're not self-aware if you're not self-aware,
Yeah.
right? So the idea that anyone could come in and give you a 12-step plan to say this is how you build self-awareness and this is how you're going to become a better teammate and better performer, well, it kind of sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
So our self-discovery was that we need to lead other people through a process of self-discovery and building a system and activities and small-sided games and this whole repertoire of tools that allow us to be that catalyst for self-discovery and then for people to develop the self-awareness to be able to recognize how they interact with the world when it's perceived as a threat or when it's seen as an opportunity, and how can we expand that mindset to be open to more of the possibility around us rather than be constrained by the fear, the scarcity and all the things that become self-limiting in our mindset. So, we've spoken a lot about teams and we've worked with a lot of teams, both, in our former business, but also in the last few years in the adaptability movement. But teams aren't just limited to sport, right? Like we've been doing work with a number of clubs, particularly in the last 2 years, around developing their youth programs and building it through to a new new culture within their senior programs to try and change the culture at a club, but by getting into the sort of the foundations of it and going, well, if we allow this to sort of dictate or default everything that we do, we're going to get the same as what we've always got. But if we want to progress this and be better, then we need to start, moving something through that system. But this is absolutely, like, it's transferable to business. And in fact, we've been doing that as well. We've been going into business teams and oftentimes they're the ones that need it the most because they've spent a lifetime just following orders or doing things in a certain way, and they haven't had the gift of sport, or in a way where there's a constant search for performance, there's a constant search for improvement on a week-to-week basis because we've got another competition coming up this week. And I've seen a real opportunity in that area because for a lot of people, they might bring in an ex-sportsman, they might do a really motivational talk and it feels great and the team might be up and about for the next couple of days and feeling really productive. But if you came back in a couple of months and asked them what actually stuck from that experience and what they're using now, oftentimes it's sort of faded into the sort of background. And what we've been able to do is go in there and build across a timeline a process of actually taking people through a system that we've used in our own sporting careers, in our own coaching and facilitation careers, which is a prepare, plan, perform, and progress. And it's simply just a way of structuring how we work through a problem, a barrier, a limitation, and where we get to then reap that reward, and then how we then keep renewing that over time.
Yeah, I think that's the key with it, is that it's not all right, we prepare, we plan, we perform, and then, that's it. We progress and, cool, everything's all good. It's a constant evolution of, you refine it and then you go again and you keep working, because it's all, with self-development and team development and all that sort of stuff, it's constantly a constant evolution over time. There's going to be different people that come in and out of your team. There's going to be different people going to different roles in your teams. Again, this doesn't matter if it's a sporting team, a business team, or even like your family is a team. So we speak about all sorts of teams, and that the process it's never finished. It's always ongoing, and the system that we created, we've found to have a great impact on the clubs, businesses that we've worked with, because it's that constant refinement to make sure that we continue to move towards something, and it's not we're not happy with just getting to one point. You know, we talk about checkpoints, and like, yes, it's great to get to checkpoints, but then what is then the next focus? What is the next checkpoint that we're going to get to make sure that we're constantly progressing towards, you know, our end goal? You know, having an end goal, we might never ever get to this massive lofty thing, but at least we're moving towards it. And as you said before, so many people are stuck in, we just do things this way because it's the way it's always been done. And that is one of my most hated sayings, because it's just stifling progress, because it's just people going, yeah, like, I'm not willing to put in the effort to make a difference, and like, things are okay, they could be better, but we're not willing to do that. So, you know, we love to work with clubs or businesses or schools that are actually very keen to progress and move towards something.
Yeah, and look, in a time where there is an increasing precedence of anxiety around the world and worry and concern, it's unsurprising that people want to seek that safety and that certainty in what they've always done, and yet it's deeply unsatisfying. Yeah. You know, most people, and perhaps yourself as a listener, can probably think of a team you're involved in. You know, it may be at work, it may be at a sports club, where it feels like we could do more, we could be better, like we could enjoy this more, bring more joy back to what we're doing. Rather than, you know, feeling like it's a bit of a grind or feeling like it's a bit of an obligation, because that literally withdraws and suppresses that joy. And we generally, you know, if it's a sports club, absolutely, that's what we're there for. If we've lost that, then I question why you're doing what you're doing. And in a business, well, whether you're working for someone else or whether you're working for yourself, if you're not going to work with some sort of enthusiasm, knowing that you're making a difference in some way, either, you know, for yourself, for your family, but, you know, generally in the role that you're playing, then what's the point? So I guess, you know, well, not I guess, I know, or I've experienced that this has great value. Like, when we can help rapidly shift someone's mindset from threat to opportunity, and one from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, one of scarcity to abundance, then everything just opens up. And that's what makes me so excited about what we're trying to do here, is because this is just an avenue to connect with yourself as a listener and other people like you that can take great benefit from some of the things that we've learnt and tested and refined over the years. And, you know, that's what makes it a win-win-win for us, because we get to sort of do something we care about and be able to support a family through that, and hopefully in the process offering someone else the opportunity to do the same. So
yeah, and I think the key with this is that, like you mentioned before, about that someone coming in and giving a talk or whatever it might be, and everyone feeling really good for a little bit, but we're about helping people become more adaptable in their attitude, which is massively key, but then also adaptable in their action, because without the action part, you know, nothing actually gets done. You know, you can think stuff and you know, talk about stuff, but if nothing's actually happening, that's the key part. So, you know, this podcast is for anyone who, you know, if you're a coach, if you're in a leadership sort of a leadership role in an organization, you know, school teachers, or if you're just in a team at all, this is going to give you, you know, some systems, some strategies, some tips around how you can continue to advance the performance of your team. So, yeah, really excited to explore those in coming episodes, and I know that we'll explore your story in the next episode. So, yeah, listen out for that.
Fantastic. So we're going to leave it there for today. Thanks for listening in. And like Ben mentioned, we'll come back for part 2 of our intro podcast, where we'll run through my story as well. And I'll hand over the reins to Ben to host.
Yeah, it's a really good story as well. So listen in.